educators and PR professionals, how do they get a seat at the table in terms of really participating in key business decisions? And what they learned essentially was they identified four key areas of competence, if you will: brand, culture, societal value, and then there was a fourth competence that they labeled it kind of an enabling competence that they called ComTech. And so we're going to include information about this research in something that we'll send out to everyone after the meeting. But essentially what they suggested in their framework was that there's an evolution. And particularly in ComTech, organizations start at a kind of perhaps a very basic level, and ideally progress to a more advanced level where they're using data and technology to really enable them to communicate effectively and conversationally with stakeholders, whether those are customers, employees, investors, whatever the stakeholder group might be. So that was a really interesting and compelling framework that helped us kind of visualize how do we need to pull together curriculum that will enable our students to be pace setters in the future. Another interesting finding in this research, they asked these leaders, what are the major impediments as you think about advancing along this ComTech spectrum? And you can see here, 61% identified skills, knowledge, and talent on their teams, people who could help drive this ComTech progression. And of course, that's really what we as educators are focusing on. How do we prepare our students to help this progression within organizations? This list, and we went out to actually about 30 of our own alumni who are now working in various roles in public relations, as well as what we were seeing in terms of marketplace demand. And when you look at this list, what strikes you is that it's a combination of digital skills and what we used to call soft skills. I prefer to call them power skills. So let me just trip down these very quickly. Storytelling. We've always, as communicators and PR people, telling stories is a foundational skill. I think what we're seeing, though, is the need to tell those stories in a variety of media: video, audio, visual, as well as narrative text. The second point there, understanding and interpreting data. Wow, digital technologies give us huge amount of data to work with. We need to be able to interpret that data, tell stories with that data, visualize that data. A third major skill area, research. We're always in the research business because we have to stay on top of what our stakeholders are thinking and doing. And then you notice the rest: curiosity, creativity, interpersonal communication, teamwork, networking, adaptability, and time management. Those are just critical skills. And when you combine them with the digital skills, you really become a powerful influencer within your organization, within your team.
As we mentioned before, a lot of what we have our curriculum developed around is developing these skills of today. And what does that mean? What are the practical ways in which you can develop today's PR skills? Well, one of the things we pride ourselves on in both the CPS program and at Northeastern as a whole is building our curriculum around real world assignments. Now, how those look, I'll get a little bit deeper into how those look specifically. Let's talk for a minute about the goals. What are the goals of a real world assignment? And this doesn't mean you can't achieve a lot with more abstract or academic assignments, just that these real world assignments are specifically built around building confidence in students that when they go out into the working world, they can handle the exact types of tasks and the exact types of work that their careers are going to throw at them. So it really helps them, because of the practical nature of the assignments, to build that confidence. They could be learning these skills in a more abstracted environment, and they probably still end up, if the class is good, with those same exact skills, but their ability to articulate how what they learned in school translates into their job requirements would not be as strong, because they learned those skills in a different context. On a more practical level, it also helps them to create a real portfolio. As an employer myself, I look for candidates who can show me that they've done, let's say for an email marketing associate, that they've created an email that's actually gone out to people versus just written an essay about emails. So they end up with a portfolio at the end of this. But think about the soft skills that Carl talked about a little bit earlier. Those are really as much in demand as technology skills, if not more so, because we know the technology shifts almost day by day. But the soft skills that are in demand right now are the ones that are a permanent core part of a student's identity and who they become as a professional. So we utilize a realistic process in order to build those soft skills like time management, storytelling, creativity. So if you're doing this in the context of being part of a student marketing agency, and that's what we have at Northeastern. We call it Husky Communications. It's our student-run marketing agency. And in fact, our students came up with that name, designed the logo, and helped build the website. So those are all the kinds of things you have to do in the real world. And that helps them build the soft skills of working together with a team, coming up with creative ideas, negotiating different creative ideas with stakeholders as well. Also gives students vocational exploration. We have a lot of students who come to us talking about, yeah, I do like that idea of calling soft skills power skills. And they don't yet know what they want to do. They know they want to do something in communications, but they don't know if they want to be an email marketing or a social media marketing or a PR person. If in the course of a single 3 or 4 credit class, you get to deploy an email campaign, deploy a social media campaign, write some blog posts, do video storytelling, you start to know what it is to work in those areas and explore your vocational interests in a much more realistic way, and thus demonstrate competencies that are aligned with today's real digital skills. So what does that actually look like? So typically in the courses that we offer, we work with a client at Husky Communications, typically mission-driven organizations. We especially like to focus on organizations led by women and people of color. And we engage with that real client. So this is not an imaginary client. This is not picture yourself as the head of PR for Coca-Cola and write an essay about what you would do. This is, they meet face-to-face, usually on Zoom, with a client, assess their needs, develop a creative brief or a strategy document to meet those needs, and then they actually execute on that campaign. It could be social media growth, getting them more social media followers, getting their story out on social media. It can be an ad campaign, a video campaign that goes out on social media. It could be blogging or SEO focused blogging, but they actually build a campaign based on the client's needs, work with the client, write a real creative brief, and then they do the tweets and the social media videos and the Instagram postings. And throughout that whole process, not only are they designing and deploying their creative, but they're also learning all of those client management skills. They're learning how to get client sign-offs and the importance of that. They're learning how to communicate timelines to clients and let them know where we are in the process, get materials from clients, negotiate if a client wants something that's out of scope, figure out how to make the client happy while still staying within scope. I often like to say that technical skills are the bait by which we get people to sign up for a class where the real agenda is mostly teaching them this kind of institutional knowledge and passing on the soft skills. But what students arrive really excited to learn on the first day of class is usually, oh, I need to know how to use Hootsuite. I need to know how to use HubSpot because I'm applying to jobs right now and they say must have experience with these tools. I need to get experience with these tools. They cost thousands of dollars. There's no way I could get the experience on my own. So what do? I can't get hired without experience. I can't afford to buy the tools that I need experience in, and I don't even have a client to practice on. So we offer that in our hands-on tools labs. I developed one class 6001, which I'll talk about a little bit more, where people use marketing automation tools to do social media management, email campaigns, SEO, content marketing, and other communications functions that are tied into automation. We also have what we call the ComTech Lab, where we use a suite of industry standard tools. I typically use some of the Adobe tools. We also use social media management tools like Hootsuite and some SEO tools like SpyFu and Moz, so that students can walk into those interviews or apply for those jobs confident that if they're asked, do you know WordPress? Do you know Hootsuite? Do you know HubSpot? They can answer yes. In fact, here's a portfolio piece that I developed using those tools. In the process of developing that technical proficiency, those students also developed that professional judgment of learning time management and collaboration.
Hi, everyone. Welcome, fellow faculty from across the United States. It's wonderful to have you here with us this afternoon. What we'd like to do in the next few minutes is talk about, so the ideas that Carl and Christina were describing, how do they work in the real world? So as Christina was mentioning, Christina, could you go to the next slide, please? As Christina was mentioning, our marketing communications public relations agency is called Husky Communications. It is a virtual firm, meaning that both our students can be anywhere as well as our clients can be anywhere. So for example, this past academic year, the one that's just winding down, one of our clients, which by the way, we came to us through our partnership with HubSpot, is an organization called ACFO, based in Amsterdam and serving clients primarily in Africa. So a truly global organization. And our students worked on 5 different projects for them during the course of, from last fall to this spring. Included op-eds for their senior executive. It included social media. And we have 2 of our folks that were engaged with that to talk a little bit about that role. It involved search engine optimization and keyword review. It included a student creating a video about one of their high profile projects that will serve as a model for future videos along the same lines. And then we had students working on direct marketing to potential donors. ACFO is a not-for-profit organization and generates its income, at least in part, through donors. So that's sort of just a quick snapshot of one client. Christina, could you go to the next slide, please? Oh, one back, please, Christina.
Yes.
Okay, great. So we just wanted to share, and it actually, I think Carl and Christina really set this up. What we've discovered over time in the ACFO project or engagement really brought this home to us is that the skills that our students are gaining really fall into 4 buckets. One is in working in digital channels. So whether it's website, whether it's social media, whether it's SEO, they're actually engaged in channel work. Another is through account team collaboration, which actually is even broader than that. It's also client contact. And so our students have been exposed based on client preferences to Teams, to Zoom, and to Slack as a way to both work together as well as interact with their client. A third bucket is content creation. And so we've had students, and so this is the actual communications, right? So this, we've had students involved in infographics, developing infographics. I mentioned a video. We had one student who, for one of our clients, not ACFO, developed and distributed a brand new e-newsletter The client had an existing mailing list, but couldn't find the time to reach out to that list. And so our student took that on. The fourth bucket is measurement. And Christina was just mentioning this. So whether it's HubSpot or it's Hootsuite or Google Analytics, our students are gaining the skills to be able to answer the client's question, how's it going? What results are we seeing? So with that, I'd like to introduce two of our students, Rachel Gardner and Neha Hamza. Rachel and Neha teamed to work on social media for ACFO, and they could do a whole webinar on the program that they ran for Georgia at ACFO over the past several months. But they're going to just show you a couple slides and give you sort of a mini look at the work that they did. So Rachel and Neha, I'm going to hand over to you.
Excited to be here with you guys. Thank you for joining. Rachel and I are very excited to talk to you about our experience with this program. I certainly feel like I am equipped with some solid skills and feel pretty confident about re-entering the workforce. So as Dr. Power shared, ACFO worked with data, and one of their goals was to share more of their ACFO stories, which were more or less informational blogs on social media in a strategic and cohesive way. So Rachel and I decided that a social media calendar would be an effective way to do just that. And what we did was spread into two parts. We took two classes back to back with Dr. Inge and Dr. Powers. In the first class, we created a social media calendar as our deliverable for the client. Here, we decided to increase the frequency of their posts to approximately 2 to 3 times a week. They weren't really posting tactically or frequently before that. They were posting to post, which I'm sure, as we know, isn't always the best way to accomplish organizational goals. We shared a variety of content, such as their blog posts, photos, and videos to engage the audience in different ways and increase their visibility. The client gave us access to their Dropbox, so we incorporated the photos and videos from their personal stock. And we utilize micro holidays. So for example, World Health Day or World Water Day that were related to their industry and their work. And this allowed us to join in on other conversations and express their thoughts on social happenings, but also gave them a really good chance to demonstrate their values as a company. And finally, we had drafted posts keeping different audiences in mind, such as those who are familiar with industry jargon, but also for those who were completely new to it. So then in the next class, we were given access to ACFO's HubSpot account, and Rachel and I were then responsible for scheduling their posts. And we made sure that each post was structured appropriately based on the platform it was going to be published on. So for example, we hashtagged industry words on Twitter, but didn't use hashtags on Facebook. And we also decided to experiment with posting at different times and using strategic hashtags, and monitored new interactions and followers in the Monitor tab in HubSpot, which was super cool. Besides the social media calendar, we also thought it would be helpful for them to have a list of like-minded organizations and individuals in the industry to follow so that they could start building key relationships through curation and their interactions. And finally, we went into LinkedIn and took a look at their analytics. It was the only account that they had given us access to. So we were able to give Georgia some screen grabs of charts that gave her insight on where her audience was located, their job functions, and the industry they work in. So I'll give it to Rachel for the next part.
Thank you, Neha. That was a great overview of everything. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the specific goals and what we saw during our time managing the social media account. So one of our main goals was to increase brand awareness and engagement. So in order to measure our efforts, we used the HubSpot metrics to measure this. We looked at interaction. This is an example of the interactions and clicks. And we were able to track this incremental increase in interactions and clicks over the 6 weeks. And as you can see through these graphs, we were successful in increasing the number of interactions on ACFO's social media posts. We also looked at follower count, the reach of social media posts, mentions, shares, retweets. And we were happy to see that LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, we all gained followers there. It's interesting to see the different types of content that was retweeted, shared, and most popular every week. And Neha and I would share a short analysis each week with the client to just give a little recap of what we saw on the social media platforms for the week. Our second goal was to drive traffic to the website. So we also saw that traffic to ACVO's website increased, and one of the client's goals was to share more of the ACVO stories that Neha mentioned. That was one of the content pieces we tried to raise during this. And this was successful because people clicked on the links. And you can see in these graphs that the clicks that was included, which is driving more traffic to ACVO's website. And our third goal was to build a community of like-minded individuals where ACVO is positioned as a thought leader. And so we, over our time managing the accounts, we saw that there were noteworthy followers that began to follow ACVO. These individuals and companies were in the industry. Some of them, an example of them was like a wash engineer. Another was a company that invested in the research, development, and industrialization of atmospheric water generators. So we definitely got like a interesting group of people. We also had reporters follow us. So that would be helpful in the future if we were to pitch a story, try to build a relationship with them. And yeah, HubSpot served as a useful platform to really gauge what was and wasn't working. And it gave us insightful brand awareness and engagement data that can be applied to ACVO's future social media plan. And it was really great to gain this real world experience where we actually had an impact on ACVO and helped to increase their brand engagement and awareness.
And so just to recap what Carl was saying, what Christina was saying, the experiential portion that we just mentioned, three things jump out at us. And actually it's interesting, in the chat box, you've raised these 3 points. What's happening in the marketplace requires a new skill set. It's a marrying of the traditional, that is the core marketing, communications, PR skills that many of us have taught for some time, with the digital skills that just keep changing, right? It's who had heard of TikTok 3 years ago? And so that ability to keep on top of it clearly has implications for our curriculum, our courses. How do we teach this stuff? How do we share knowledge? And particularly, I'll share that I rely on Christina so much because she's so knowledgeable. That aspect of some of these topics, I would not describe myself, I'm not an expert. It's I'm still learning myself. But we think, leading into the third point, it leads into experiential. We have found is just simply a great way of learning. It's learning by doing, and the feedback we get from our students reinforces that point. They come away with confidence, and they come away with items for their e-portfolios.